Now, in a big win for India, China has said its troops have disengaged at 4 places of standoff in Eastern Ladakh, including in the Galwan Valley. Now, the announcement comes days after Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi met India's National Security Advisor Ajit Doval in Russia on the sidelines of a conclave of national security advisors of the BRICS nations. Now, Ajit Doval and Wang Yi are the special representatives for the India-China border talks mechanism. In a press briefing on Friday, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Mao Ning highlighted that in recent years, frontline armies of the two countries have disengaged in 4 areas in the western sector of the India-China border, including the Galwan Valley. She further said that the situation along the border is generally stable and under control. India's External Affairs Ministry in a statement said that India and China have agreed to work with urgency and redouble their efforts to achieve complete disengagement in the remaining friction points in Eastern Ladakh. Relations between the two South Asian countries have been at a 6-decade low since the face-off on the LAC began in April of 2020. India has maintained that its ties with China cannot be normal unless there is peace in the border areas. For more on this, we are now joined by strategic affairs expert Professor Madhav Nalapath from Manipal. Professor Nalapath is also the Vice Chairman of the Manipal Advanced Research Group. Good to have you with us, Professor Nalapath. Now, do tell us, since June of 2020, when around 20 Indian soldiers were killed in clashes in the Galwan Valley, diplomatic relations, of course, between India and China have nosedived. And since then, both nations have held more than 20 rounds of talks to restore peace along the LAC. So what does this latest announcement by China really mean in terms of actually reviving the bilateral ties?
Well, if you'd like to understand what this means, you have to look at it from the viewpoint of the CCP top leadership. There's no point looking at it from the viewpoint of the United States or India or anybody else. You have to look at it from the point of view of the highest levels, of the higher levels of the CCP. And they never look at any issue in isolation. They look at a whole range of issues. And this particular issue, if the range of issues is such, they want to resolve it. And this particular issue may be one part of the entire whole. What is happening now is that the internal situation in China is not good for Xi Jinping. I've said from the time he started his 3rd term to the mistake of his life, because the entire party leadership is upset with him for upsetting the process, the normal standard processes set by paramount leader Deng Xiaoping, who is still revered in China, respected across the world, and for the immense contribution he made to the prosperity of the Chinese people. Remember, so from that point of view, the Chinese look upon India as a threat. Why? From the 1990s, when we were competing with them for external investment. And they basically went all the way. And in our case, Narasimha Rao was not allowed to go all the way and reform the economy as thoroughly as he could have, with the result that the Chinese economy was completely open to foreign investment. And a flood of investment started coming in from that time onwards. And China left India behind by tens of kilometers, let's put it that way. So from that time, they know that in India, if you have smart policy, you can be a threat to China. That threat is especially big now in the age in which it is very obvious that Cold War 2.0 is upon us between China and the democracies, etc., etc. It's not Cold War 1.0 between the USSR, which is now gone, from 1991, and the West and democracies. It is between China and the democracies and some other countries such as Vietnam. So from that point of view, a decoupling has started.
Right.
And the worry is it can be done, India can absorb a huge amount of that inflow of investment that is going from China. So Chinese are looking upon the Indian ability to basically absorb investment from China as a threat. And they are therefore, very beginning, they want to weaken India. Both the PM as well as the EAM and the NSA, I'm sure they understand very well that the mindset of the Chinese is to create problems. But today, what are they looking at? They're looking at a victory on the battlefield. Why? Because Xi Jinping made the mistake of his life by going in for a third term. To get a fourth term, essential for him, if he is to frankly survive in the party or maybe even existentially, he needs a fourth term. He needs a victory.
Nalapat, right. So what you're actually saying here is that the reason behind the seemingly increased accommodative stance by China now, currently, although the diplomatic relations have nosedived from June of 2020, even then India was perceived as threat as per you by China. So what I want to ask here, hair split this a little bit more, what has happened now this time around that China has made this announcement?
Look, I am not going to take this announcement very seriously. The Chinese CCP uses words to camouflage action and intention. So frankly, I have to see which those points are in Ladakh from which they have withdrawn, how quickly they can come back. My guess is they can come back in a jiffy. So I'm not going to take this seriously at face value of theirs, and neither, I'm sure, is the top leadership of India. The fact is they need a certain amount of tranquility on that border because it is now more and more clear that their target is Taiwan. Right. Recently, the CIA director said by 2027, expect a war over Taiwan. I've been saying that right from 2022. And I agree. I think Taiwan is now the target, no longer the Himalayan reaches. It's Taiwan that's the target. So they want to focus on Taiwan. So they want to keep the Indian frontier quiet. And that is what this whole thing is all about, to keep the frontier quiet until, and for example, to keep Ukraine going, to keep the Ukraine going until they can, quote unquote, resolve the issue of Taiwan, by which, as the CIA director has finally woken up and realized, could mean an invasion by China. So that's why they're going ahead with this border talks, etc., and suddenly seeming to break the ice. They need to break the ice because the focus is now on Taiwan, because Xi Jinping needs a victory by 2027 or he's toast.
Okay. Professor Nalapat, also Indian External Affairs Minister Jaishankar says that 75% of issues have been resolved. So what are the sticking points that remain here?
Look, if you go through a complete, a body scan and a body checkup, 99% of issues can be resolved. But let's say, I'm just using a simile. Let's say that 1% is a lesion in your lung, which indicates the presence of an atypical cell, which basically means lung cancer. You're in deep trouble. So frankly, 75%, 95%, these percentages are frankly just percentages. 1% of 1% can represent a serious threat. And I can tell you, I know the EAM, I know the NSA, to some small extent I know the PM. They are people of great wisdom and great depth of knowledge, and they must certainly be knowing what the Chinese intentions actually are, and they would definitely have plans ready to counter that, as indeed we are seeing. Prime Minister Modi is the first Prime Minister who has essentially ensured countering China all across the border, and that has flummoxed the Chinese. Never before had a government been so direct and so, if I may say, so strong in defending our border.
Okay. Professor Nalapat, thank you so much for joining us today with your insights on this.
Jai Hind.
For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.